This week, Siskel and Ebert review ingenue Julia Ormond, dazzling businessman Harrison Ford in Sabrina. Jennifer Jason Leigh dreams of love and fame in the melodrama Georgia. And Steve Martin and Diane Keaton get 2 visits from the stork in Father of the Bride Part 2.
Came true. I'm gonna have a baby.
We're pregnant.
Steve Martin and Diane Keaton have married off their daughter, but that's just the start of the story in Father of the Bride Part 2, one of the new big holiday movies we'll review this week on Siskel and Ebert. Also coming up, Harrison Ford and Julia Ormond in a remake of a Hollywood classic. Jennifer Jason Leigh is a troubled rock singer, and Mia Farrow in a bizarre Christmas fantasy. I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune. Our first film is Father of the Bride Part 2. And hey, here's something rare. I enjoyed a sequel a lot more than the original. It has more scenes of true emotion without sacrificing its overlay of comedy. The story this time is that put-upon father Steve Martin has to deal with the trauma of pregnancy. Yes, his little girl is now going to have a baby.
I never liked that Brian McKenzie. Not from the moment I laid eyes on him. Here my little girl was playing house. He had the nerve to...
George. What do you say, Dad?
Congratulations.
You too.
But there's one more surprise for Martin and his wife, played by Diane Keaton.
But pregnant? How could this happen, Nina Dickerson?
Why are you calling me by my maiden name, you big jerk? And what do you mean we haven't done it to police? What about that little escapade in the kitchen?
Oh, please, that was a stupid nothing. I mean, that was a moment of pure insanity.
Would you like to know how many moments of pure insanity I've delivered over the last 20 years?
Phil, look at me. I'm about to be a grandfather. Things like this do not happen to men my age.
Back for an encore is the ridiculous party planner designer, played by Martin Short, and his assistant, played by B.D. Wong.
The ultrasound photo. Your baby's first picture.
That is first picture done. What a argument.
I am.
Oh, my God. That's too much. Mother of the bread and the booby. Get out of town.
They're okay, but it's really Steve Martin's heartfelt performance that's at the center of the appeal of Father of the Bride Part 2. I think one of the most fascinating aspects of this movie is that its leads, Diane Keaton and Steve Martin, are in real life childless. I guess that proves they can really act, especially when given a winning script by Nancy Myers and Charles Shire, who definitely do have children.
Well, Gene, I had a lot of affection for this movie. It did make me feel warm, but I can't recommend it, and I'll tell you why. It seems to me that it didn't have the same driving energy that the original film did in terms of setting its agenda and getting there. Here, there were too many side trips to refer to the previous movie. Now, I loved Martin Short's character, for example, but in the first movie, he was very necessary. Here, it's like, well, we have to bring Martin Short back again, and then he's not very well explained. And some of the other elements in the movie are simply there to refer back. They take away from the dramatic tension. Then the ending, the 2 big childbirth scenes, I thought that was done a lot better in Mickey and Maude, the Blake Edwards picture.
Let me tell you, you're missing what the center of the film is, and it's all Steve Martin. He is very good. He's so good, he could have been a silent film actor. For a guy who's a writer,
Steve Martin,
for a writer, for a comic who requires the spoken word, he's excellent because he's playing every single emotion through him, and it is joyful.
And that brings me to my next point. I remember that right before you and your wife dated the stork for the first time, you gave thumbs up to 2 of the worst movies ever made, 6 Weeks and Table for Five. Now, at Steve Martin's age, you have become a father again, and the same thing has happened. You like Steve Martin because you look at that screen and you see yourself.
Does that mean that you're incapable of liking a film about children not having any?
Incapable of liking a bad film, yes.
Well, this isn't it.
Okay, next movie. Our next movie is Reckless, a creepy comedy that takes place in a nightmare dream world that begins on Christmas Eve. It's one of those films where the art direction deliberately distorts reality so that everything seems a little smaller or a little more crooked than usual, and the characters and dialogue seem to match. Mia Farrow stars as a woman who thinks she is happily married and nestled all snug in her bed, visions of sugar plums dancing in her head, I suppose, when she hears a noise downstairs, and it ain't Santa and his reindeer. No, she gets some very bad news from her husband, played by Tony Goldwyn.
This is a 38. It's all planned to look like he broke in. I pulled this, and he killed you. You understand? A thief, an accident.
So mean.
Farrow escapes from her house and is rescued by a seemingly innocent stranger played by Scott Glenn, who is almost never innocent in the movies, seemingly or not. He takes her home to meet his wife, a deaf-mute paraplegic played by Mary Louise Parker.
She says you didn't have to do that.
Of course I didn't have to do that. You didn't have to ask a woman in her slippers to spend Christmas with you either.
The basic impulse of Reckless is to create a dream landscape in which anything is possible, and where the heroine, played by Farrow, like Alice in Wonderland, supplies an audience for a series of bizarre and sinister characters. My problem was that I was never sure where the movie was going or what it wanted to do, and I'm not sure the movie was either. It was beautifully put together, it looks great, but like its heroine, it seemed to be wandering aimlessly.
You know, Roger, I didn't care for the film either, but I admire the attempt to do something different. I want to be clear about that. You know what this picture could have been if it had been successful? It could have been possibly a female Forrest Gump. It has the same reach, not the scale, but it has the same reach, taking this odd character through a series of adventures. I'm not giving it a positive recommendation. I just know that this is a picture that tries to do something different. I have to acknowledge
some
that.
people who have made some good movies, including Longtime Companion, which we like very much. And
that's Norman Renee, the director.
Yes, and I think you're right that they're trying to do something that is admirable. It kind of reminded me in a way of The Nightmare Before Christmas, the Tim Burton animated film that also wanted to get a totally different take on all of these holiday cliches. But
it doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
Coming up next, Harrison Ford and Julia Ormond star in a remake of the classic love story, Sabrina.
You convinced me that there were some things missing in my life.
How can they come true?
Sabrina?
Why does he keep saying that?
I need to go find my father. I'll get my bags later.
Wait a minute.
Thanks for the ride.
David. No.
Harrison Ford plays an imperious businessman with no time for love until he meets Julia Ormond in a remake of Sabrina, and this takes guts. Remaking a Billy Wilder script, first enacted by, get this, Humphrey Bogart, Audrey Hepburn, and William Holden. And yet, director Sidney Pollack has mostly pulled it off. Harrison Ford and Greg Kinnear, the talk show host making a fine film debut, play the rivalrous Larrabee brothers, one a workaholic, the other a layabout. Ford wants Kinnear to marry his fiancée so the marriage can help push through an inter-family business merger.
I'm not ready to make this kind of commitment.
Oh, I see. She must have asked for an actual wedding date.
I don't know what came over me. She was healing children. I was in a tuxedo. I'm not in any position to take care of a wife.
Elizabeth is a doctor and a millionaire, David. She won't be a burden.
But Kinnear is soon smitten by another woman, the daughter of the chauffeur at his family mansion, who went to Paris as a disheveled duckling and has returned as a haute couture swan. He doesn't recognize Sabrina, played by the lovely Julia Ormond.
I'm just surprised to see you here.
Well, you know me. Don't you? Or can I give you a lift?
Are you on your way home?
Yes.
But this infatuation does not go unnoticed. At a family party that night, he's confronted by his no-nonsense mother, Nancy Marchand.
Are you insane? Right smack dab in front of your prominent and paranoid future in-laws, you are hustling the chauffeur's daughter.
But the rival for Sabrina's affection turns out to be his own brother. And in this lovely scene, we realize that this love story is just beginning to play itself out amid some gorgeous surroundings.
Look at you. It's as though a lovely breeze has swept through this whole house.
Even though the breeze comes from the general direction of the garage?
It's the 90s, Sabrina.
Sabrina argues for love over money, a movie staple since the earliest days of film itself. Director Sidney Pollack has mounted a beautiful production, peopled by a fine cast, something rare on this show now. A sequel and a remake it is, Father of the Bride Part 2 that works, and now a remake of a good film that works too.
Yeah, I'm not quite convinced it's love over money, since after all, Sabrina has lived up over the garage as the chauffeur's daughter and has looked at these rich people and their parties for a long time, and I'm not sure she would be as attracted to Harrison Ford, 35 years her senior, if he were not a billionaire.
I think
nevertheless,
yeah, okay.
in the first movie, I didn't think that maybe Audrey Hepburn would find Humphrey Bogart that attractive. He's not really as attractive in a way as Harrison Ford is if he hadn't been a billionaire. And apart from that, I agree with you anyway. Okay. This movie works. It works as a romance. It works in terms of its witty dialogue, and the actors pull it off. Even Greg Kinnear, who comes from Talk Soup, and you might think, well, can he act or not? The answer is yes, he can act.
And how that Sidney Pollack knew that in casting him, I have no idea.
He's an awfully good director. He must have known that because he took a gamble. He could have had any actor in Hollywood, and he got a good one. Julia Ormond, how does she stand up by comparison to Audrey Hepburn? Very well. Julia Ormond has a classic face, classic features, and a classic personality on screen. She can play that kind of role.
And you know that the reason that she gets away with it or comes off so well is because, and I want to be very clear how I say this, a lot of major actresses have been playing trashy roles. And so the audience is dying for, all of us are dying for, a classy woman. And you see it in Annette Bening in The American President, and you see it here. There's a thirst for somebody, let's face the word, wholesome and good.
And she
has
who she reminds me of in her face is Ingrid Bergman. And she has that same kind of genuine quality to her on the screen. It's very important. When we come back, Jennifer Jason Leigh plays, not a very wholesome woman, plays a deeply troubled would-be rock singer in Georgia.
My sister's here tonight, everybody. And we're going to do one of her songs. You want to come up and do it with us, Georgia?
Jennifer Jason Leigh plays a drifting would-be singer named Sadie, who is reunited there with her sister, a pop star played by Mare Winningham. And just as the older sister, named Georgia, has always been the perfect member of the family, singing her songs and raising her children and making her husband happy, so has the younger one, Sadie, been troubled and self-destructive.
So, are you drinking?
You know me, whatever's cheap or free.
Georgia, played by Winningham, loves her sister and tries to put up with her, but it's not easy. And she shares her secret feelings with her husband in this scene. He's played by Ted Levine.
She swallows people up. How do you not see it?
I think she's an original and brave and without malice.
This movie was written by Barbara Turner, who is Jennifer Jason Leigh's mother, and seems to have a deep understanding of the kinds of family issues involved.
You were the one with the ambition, Sadie. I never gave a damn.
You say.
You know it's the truth.
Funny how things work out.
Not what I meant.
One of the things that makes Georgia, directed by Ulu Grossbard, such a good movie is the way it shows Sadie, the troubled sister, testing her relationships with everyone. She has such low self-esteem that she can't believe anyone likes her, and so she acts badly toward them just as a test to see if they'll put up with her or not. If they will, maybe that means that they love her. This movie is as true to its psychological truth as it possibly can be, and it's another example of the fearless work that has made Jennifer Jason Leigh one of the most riveting actors of her generation.
Well, she is a great risk taker, and she has done it again here. And what I like about this picture is that it has a good sense of balance between the two sisters. Another kind of writer or director, I think, would have made it just a showcase alone for the Sadie character and titled the picture Sadie. I think there's a key in the sense that the title is Georgia and that she gets, if not equal time, equal psychological weight. It is the family, you're quite right, it is the family dynamic that holds us. We've been down the street before with people with addiction problems.
The cliche.
That's not what this film is so, that's not why the film's so good.
Yeah, the cliche would be, as in the movie Rose, for example, the cliche would be that everything is about Sadie and she's the genius and she's misunderstood by her square family. And here you begin to see how hard she is on everybody who's around her and how they just can't put up with this indefinitely.
Yeah.
And it's that the movie is about, and what performances. And Mayor Winningham, of course, has a more thankless role.
Exactly. I was going to use the same word. Yeah, exactly. Coming up next, we'll take a look at a controversy that made the front pages of newspapers across the country.
Okay, just wait to see if they're in the game or not.
Bingo! Bingo! That's a scene from Money Train in which Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson play New York Transit cops who try to capture a sicko who douses subway token sellers with gasoline and then burns them alive inside their booze. Now, when a real-life New York token seller was tragically burned in a apparent copycat fashion, the familiar calls for Hollywood to come to its senses rang out, especially from politicians on the make. My reaction? I had a couple. First, there's been, thankfully, only one such incident, and the script of Money Train was based in part on some real-life torching. So which bit of madness really did come first is a real issue. Clearly, however, not everyone is rushing out to duplicate this twisted act. So the variable has to be the culprit, the perpetrator, not the movie. And yet, I was reminded also of something the great director Francois Truffaut once told me, that movies in some way always argue for the behavior they show, because movies with their scale and imagery and sound glamorize everything, Truffaut said. For example, look at this sequence in Francis Coppola's Apocalypse Now, the napalm explosion. It's kind of cool, isn't it? Which is Coppola's acknowledgement, I think, of the attraction we have to elements of warfare.
This is the end, beautiful friend.
Alas, the filmmaker behind Money Train, Joseph Rubin, is no Francis Coppola. His whole movie, I think, is shock for shock's sake. In some way, Truffaut, a great critic as well as a great filmmaker, would argue that the Technicolor flames and the rock and roll soundtrack and the stuntman inside the fire suit in Money Train come across as exciting and far more glamorous than the reality and stink of burning flesh. And so my point, quite simply, is to remind commercial filmmakers that they're playing around with some very powerful tools, very powerful images that argue for taste and thought, more than for exploitation.
Well, Gene, that's very thoughtfully put, and I agree with it. But what I would like to do then is also remind politicians that they're dealing with powerful images. And obviously, in an election season, there are a lot of votes to be made by attacking Hollywood and attacking entertainment. And presumably then what they would want to do would be to censor films and prevent films like this from being made. So I would like to point out to you that although it hasn't been proven whether or not the people who did this in New York saw the movie or not.
Right, I know that.
It's tragic that somebody was severely critically wounded, and that's terrible. But the people who on the basis of this event now want to attack movies and gets lots of votes for that are the same people, curiously enough, who want to raise the speed limit nationally, and that will cost 10,000 more lives a year, it's been estimated. And they're also the same people that want to relax pollution controls, and that could cost hundreds of thousands or even millions of lives over a period of time by allowing industry to pollute our rivers and our lakes and our air.
So your question is, how sincere a film critic are they?
They're hypocrites. They're just driven by what they think the people want to hear.
I'm going to get back to reviewing films and simply say that I have seen this stuff, which I can object to as a film critic in more than just one film.
When we come back, a wonderful family film that's now on video, and it's perfect for the holidays.
Siskel and Ebert's Video Pick of the Week, brought to you by Orville Redenbacher's Gourmet Popping Corn, the best part of the movies.
And now it's time for our Video Pick of the Week. And my pick this week is a magical film that came out last March and is just now appearing on video in time for holiday giving and watching. It's called The Secret of Rowan Inish, and it tells the story of a young girl named Fiona growing up in Ireland in the years after the war. She is sent to live with her grandparents near the seashore and explores the nearby island of Rowan Inish, where the family once lived. The story of how one of her ancestors might have been a selkie, a mythical creature that's half woman and half seal, catches the little girl's imagination.
You're after something?
I am.
It's plain as day.
Will I find it?
She knows that the cradle of her baby brother Jamie was once carried off by the sea and maybe by selkies, and now on the island she finds unmistakable signs that Jamie may have survived and perhaps was cared for by selkies. The Secret of Rowan Inish was directed by John Sayles and photographed by Haskell Wexler, and it's one of the most beautiful films in a long time, lyrical in its view of those breathtaking Irish landscapes and the amazing secrets that they conceal. It's my video pick of the week. Now let's take another look at the movies we reviewed on this show. A split decision on Father of the Bride Part 2. We both thought it was a warm, feel-good movie, but to me it was kind of thin. Gene, however, liked the Steve Martin performance in particular. 2 thumbs down, though, for the confused and ultimately pointless Christmas fantasy Reckless, which was a great job of art direction and imagination, but a muddled job of storytelling. 2 very enthusiastic thumbs up for the wonderful love story Sabrina. And 2 more thumbs up for Georgia with Jennifer Jason Leigh, and another one of those risky performances where she takes big chances and gets away with them.
That's it for this week. Next week we'll be back with reviews of more big holiday movies, including Heat, starring Robert De Niro as a master criminal pursued by Detective Al Pacino. And Robin Williams plays a man who returns to his childhood home after being kept prisoner for decades within a sinister board game called Jumanji. That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.
The Iced Teapot by Mr. Coffee. The easy way to enjoy fresh brewed iced tea, made just the way you want it, the Iced Teapot. This holiday season, discover the excitement and intrigue of the world's greatest brain teasers with 30-second mysteries. 30-second mysteries, new from University Games. Experience the glamour and elegance of the exclusive Aspen lifestyle with the brilliant fragrance of Aspen Cologne for women. VCR alert for Christmas. It's the brand new 1996 edition of Roger Ebert's Video Companion. It comes with a separate pocket video guide.